G'day and welcome to the Intact Beyond Transformation Series. I'm Nathan Dale, CEO of Intact Beyond. Thanks very much for joining us. In today's deep dive, we have Brad McEwan, Ambassador for Beyond Blue. He's going to be talking to us about mental health. He's going to look at the signs and symptoms around mental health, as well as areas like the power of vulnerability and the power of kindness. Facilitating is Nicole Watson, and I'll hand over to the guys. Thanks very much again for joining us.
My name's Nicole Watson, and I'll be facilitating today's deep dive with Brad McEwan. Hi, Brad. How are you today?
Hello, Nicole. Really nice to chat to you. Terrific. Thank you.
Good. That's great. Hey, look, Brad, thanks so much for taking the time to share your expertise with our viewers today. Everyone's going through a really tough time. It can be very challenging. How has this time affected you personally?
Well, it's certainly, it's changed the way that my work operates. Like most people, I imagine, Nicole, I was doing presentations in person and that stopped almost immediately once the restrictions came into place. However, that has been replaced by virtual learning, webinar type programs like we are participating in today. And there's been a real demand, like we're chatting about, around that mental health and wellbeing space, which is a sign of the environment that we're in at the moment. Is the normal, whatever normal was, is not normal anymore. A lot of people are working from home. They don't have that connection in the workplace anymore. They might be juggling kids. They might be out of work. So there are certainly factors that have made things really different. And for a lot of people, it's about coping with that difference. It's not something that they're used to. So like we focus so much in our lives around physical health, right now, we really have to focus on our mental health and our well-being to get through this and get through this together with the support of everyone around us.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. And I mean, the current situation, being in isolation, we need to try and do everything possible to take control of our own mental health, because I mean, I know myself, I get sucked into, spending my time looking at the news, looking on social media, quite often, sources that are probably not accurate, that they're not correct. There's so much noise out there. It is actually really hard to find, many positives in the media at the moment. So therefore you need to take control, and whether or not that's, going out for a walk or exercising at home, we spoke about, baking again and things like that. And really getting back in touch with your hobbies and the things that make you happy, and taking control of your mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on there around media and social media and what do you focus on? You can easily read an article saying that Oxford University is only a few months away from a vaccine. You can read another article saying that we are years away from a vaccine. So we have to choose wisely and decide how much information that we want to take in and where do we get our information from, because that has a real impact on our well-being.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. Thank you very much. So Brad, what will we be focusing on today?
Nicole, we will be talking around mental health and well-being. So I'll start off with a bit of background about why I do what I do. And predominantly, I've been a Beyond Blue ambassador for around about a decade. And as you can see there in that quote, and that's just a quote from me, and that is that I have nothing to hide, but I do have a story to share. And when I first came across Beyond Blue, I was living in Brisbane about 2005, and Channel 10, where I was working, was supporting Beyond Blue with an event. And I found myself at the event thinking, I can help here. And I felt like I would be a fraud if I didn't open up about not just my story, but our family's story. And that goes back a number of years, 3 decades. In the mid to late 80s, we went through a really traumatic period where we lost my brother and my father as a result of suicide. And look, there are people watching this that have also been impacted by suicide. And I urge a lot of the things that we'll talk about today, anyone that if you are not feeling okay because of the content, reach out, get help, talk to the people that you need to. But look, as my mum, who's been a very positive influence in my life, not just very, incredible. You know, she's a retired nurse now, but we lived in a small town and mum would race out every second night, helping people. Mum's all about helping people, and you do it because they need you. But mum would often say, it's not what happens to us that defines us, it's our attitude to what happens to us. So many years ago, I and as a family, we thought, well, let's get out there and let's help other people who have been impacted by mental health issues, in particular suicide, because when you can come across someone who sadly has experienced what we have, and to put your arm around their shoulder or give them a hug or shake their hand or just connect with them and say to them, I know what you're going through. That is such an incredibly powerful thing. Hence the reason that I'm involved with Beyond Blue. When we talk around mental health, Nicole, it's interesting. You mention mental health to people and they say, oh, mental health, it's got nothing to do with me. But if you talk about physical health, they say, oh, yeah, physical health. Yeah, that's important. We have to work on it. Same. We have to work on our mental health. We have to be on our game. Now, I'm not a mental health practitioner, but as a mental health advocate, I have a lived experience and I have my own stuff. And when I'm not feeling so good, I go and get help. Why? Because it works. That's why I do it. So what I'll be talking about is as my perspective as a mental health advocate. So when we're talking around mental health, you can see there are the simple mental health conditions like depression and anxiety, a number of different forms there. And they are the issues that we need to be really wary of, in particular at the moment with COVID-19. Then you have your complex mental health conditions, schizophrenia, bipolar 1 and 2. I'm not an expert in those areas, so I'm not going to go down that path, nor would anyone watching this expect me to. Here are some statistics on depression and anxiety. Now, remember, this is pre-COVID-19. There's a lot of dialogue at the moment, and what we know is that we have to be really careful, and we have to start working on this now, because when people have lost their jobs, when people don't have a connection like they did previously, depression and anxiety and suicide is going to be more prevalent going forward. So you can see there 1 in 6 Australians experiencing depression or anxiety or both. That was pre-COVID-19. We would expect that, well, that is going to go up. 1 in 3 females will experience an anxiety condition in their lifetime compared to 1 in 5 men. I'm a glass half full person, but in this instance, I'm not. 50% of people are getting help, which is good. But that also says that 50% of people are not getting help. So they're suffering in silence. So what are they doing to counter that? Are they drinking? Are they taking drugs? Are they taking it out on their partner? Their family? Who knows? More people need to get the help that is available out there. I won't go through all of these, but this just gives an example of things that we need to look out for example, with anxiety, panic attacks, hot and cold flushes, tightening of the chest. There are just a few of them. The psychological factors there, excessive fear, worry, obsessive thinking, behavioural things that we need to be aware of. And this, we know this, and those people with anxiety are, this is the way that, I won't say they, I'll say we. I've only really acknowledged recently my obsessive compulsive disorder. When I was a teenager, it could be pretty bad. But even at 49, I still do it now and again. I think that I don't do it anymore, but as soon as I'm worried about someone, my routines, my tapping, all of this stuff, it comes back. And a number of years ago, I actually opened up in a conversation with someone because I remember growing up, my family would just say, oh, that's just Brad, that's his stuff. But now when I talk about OCD, and this is what I do, and I have numbers that I keep going back to, and I have unlucky numbers and rituals, and I tap this, that, it sounds really bizarre, but people with OCD know what I'm talking about. Do you know how many times people that I'm talking to look at me and they smile and they say, yeah, me too. I have described exactly what they experience as well. In regards to depression, there are so many signs and symptoms of depression. Not going out anymore, relying on alcohol, as we touched on before, unable to concentrate, those feelings of being overwhelmed, guilty, irritable, frustrated, having no confidence. The thoughts many of you are aware of: I'm a failure, it's my fault, I'm worthless. And then physical signs and symptoms as well: being tired and run down, not sleeping so well, losing or gaining weight. And in regards to suicide as well, there are things that you can look out for. It might not be a sign, but I always feel that, I know from my experience, I ask, because having been there as a family, you do become incredibly paranoid and you do worry about everyone. But I'm okay with that, because I would rather ask than not ask. And you know what? At the very least, by asking, I'm saying to someone, I care. People might be wondering, how do you have these conversations with someone you're worried about? My answer to that is, if you're worried about them enough, they're probably a friend or a colleague. I would think that you'll know how to have that conversation with them. Maybe you go for a walk. Maybe you go and have a cup of coffee. Maybe you go to the pub. I'm not certainly suggesting and promoting excessive drinking, far from it. But if going and having a beer or a glass of wine is the conduit to the connection, to have a conversation that might be difficult but might save a life, if that works, go for it. So how do we look after our mental health at the moment while we're self-isolating? We haven't done this before, have we? You go back to the Spanish flu 100 years ago. This is new, and this is not just for people within Australia. What we know is this is the world. Some things to focus on. It is only temporary. It will pass. The power of kindness, which I'll talk about later. You're helping people. How good is that? You are helping people. We are part of a team. Stay connected. Yeah, you might not see people at work, but there are a whole heap of ways to stay connected. And I would imagine a lot of people watching this are very aware of them. Do the healthy things that make you feel good. Be aware of your sleep routines. Eat healthy food. I have to work on that one. Hey, I'm not here saying I've got all of this sorted. I can assure you I'm a work in progress as well, aren't we all? Have those routines at home. This is something I really need: structure. Get up, get out of bed, the alarm goes off, have your breakfast, get into a routine like you're at work. Other people are fine with that. I need to work on that. And as Nicole, you and I touched on earlier, just be aware of the news and social media. There's some rubbish on social media, stating the bleeding obvious, but gee, there's some really good stuff as well. And I'll show you an example of that in a moment. Beyond Blue, I'm biased, I'm an ambassador, but it is the most wonderful resource. They've actually just launched a podcast as well. You can read about that on the website, beyondblue.org.au. But at the moment as well, you can see there, they've also got the mental wellbeing support service. You can jump on there and they've got things like, you can talk to a counsellor. You can be part of an online community forum, which I'm told is incredibly popular at the moment. Everyone's getting a lot of use out of it and positive feedback. There's so many different forms of information, advice and strategies. I touched on suicide before, and it talks about how to deal with suicide. Now, whether it's yourself or someone that you are deeply concerned about, number 1, 000. That's your first contact. And following that lifeline, 13, 11, 14. I spoke about the strategies. There are things like how to support older people, how to manage your alcohol intake during isolation, and also, and it's a big one, obviously, for a lot of people, how to look after yourself through unemployment, something that you have to very much be aware of. I saw this on social media, Nicole, and people watching, and I just thought, gee, this is so powerful. At about the same time, I saw a gorgeous quote, and it said, "We're not stuck at home, we are safe at home." How true is that? We're safe. I know my partner Cassie and I, we're here. Muffin, the cat's asleep over there. Look, we're homebodies anyway, and so it hasn't really impacted us, and we don't have kids, but we're focusing on what we still got to do, not what we can't do. And you can see there, you can't control other people following social distancing rules, other people's actions. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how other people will react, and we certainly don't know how long it'll last. The one up there on the top right, we cannot control the amount of toilet paper at the store. Thankfully, that appears to have passed. Wasn't that just madness? What can we control? Our attitude, our positivity. Yeah, we're going to get through this, and we're going to get through it together. Turning off the news, finding fun things to do at home. We have a jigsaw that is 3/4 done up in the spare room right now. About half a dozen pieces of the jigsaw have been chewed by Muffin, but it doesn't matter. We still know where they go. We can control our own social distancing, and I'll talk about this later with Nathan, but kindness and grace. Kindness is always so valuable, so powerful. Now it's taken on a whole another level. It really has. So let's talk about the language and actions around mental health and well-being. Some things just to remember. As much as you want to help and you'll care about people, you're not a counsellor. You can do everything you want, but you're not a counsellor. So don't put that pressure on yourself. Here's one that was pointed out to me not so long ago. Try and avoid saying that you understand when someone's talking around their mental health, particularly if it is an acute mental health condition. You actually don't understand because you don't know what they are going through. You can have an idea, and that's where it's better to say things like, that must be incredibly difficult for you, or I hear what you're saying, okay? Empathy versus sympathy. You can feel sorry for someone, but a lot of people are naturally empathetic. Some struggle with it, but it is something we can all work on when you are really putting yourself in someone's shoes and you feel for them and your heart goes out to them. That is just a really powerful thing at the moment. And listening. Listen to people, because what do we so often do? I saw this quote last year. When we're listening, we're not really listening a lot of the time. We're listening to reply. We've all done it. Somebody's saying something and you're thinking in your head, oh yeah, now I'm going to say this, I'll give this example. So by thinking about how you're going to reply, you're not actually listening to what they're saying. Something to keep in mind. I think this picture says it all. You don't have to save people a lot of the time. Just be there, support them, care for them, be their safety net while they save themselves. Okay, leadership, language and actions in regards to mental health. Vulnerability. I spoke before about my obsessive compulsive disorder. Whenever my mental health hasn't been great, I go and see someone. I've got stuff. You know what? I don't know of anyone that doesn't have stuff. Stuff can be whatever you want it to be. So then here's the question. Why do we then spend so much time pretending that we don't have stuff? Maybe there's an opportunity to say to someone who is struggling, you say, hey, you know what you're experiencing? Me too. Yeah, You might be surprised, but I know exactly what you're talking about. As a team, you might not be working next to each other every day, but if there's an awareness of how everyone is going, that's just a wonderful thing to do. Flexibility. People are working at home. People aren't working at home. People going forward might continue to work from home. Everybody's different. Have those open conversations. And of course, training around mental health is really valuable. I only did my mental health first aid course earlier this year. Gee, it was good. And I learned so much, and I've been talking in this space for a long time. Why is normalising mental health so important? Stigma. Here's the thing. Why is there a stigma? This is my belief, that the stigma associated from mental health is almost something that we have inherited from generations ago, when maybe our parents and grandparents, great-grandparents, viewed mental health or mental illness as a weakness. Something was wrong with you. You didn't speak about those things. But remember, people also thought the earth was flat, and smoking, fine, nothing wrong with cigarettes. What do we now know? Mental health conditions are part of life, like physical health conditions. This is the example I think of. Imagine hypothetically, a friend says, I need to talk. I've got some bad news. You go, you have a cup of coffee. They say, I've got cancer. You'd be horrified for them. Your next question would probably be, well, what is the treatment? Could you imagine your disbelief if they then said to you, I'm not going to do anything, and please don't tell anyone. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I've got cancer. You'd look at them and you'd say, what are you talking about? It's not your fault. Physical illness, mental illness, not your fault. As I often say to people, you know, when you're going to work on a Monday and you've been for a run or golf or tennis and you've gone a bit hard, and you know why you have the aches and the pains, the hammy's tight. How terrifying to wake up in the morning and it might be a sunny day, but in your head, everything is cloudy. You can't get out of bed. That is terrifying. And by normalising mental health, it highlights that we're all human. We've all got stuff. I'll talk about that a bit more in a moment. We fellas, we're good at some things, not all things. And a lot of us aren't very good at talking and speaking up, sharing our emotions. So by normalising mental health, we do that. It encourages a connection. There is not too many things on this earth more powerful than a human connection. And it encourages people to reach out and get the help that they need. This is a picture that we all associate with from movies. Now, there's probably lightning and going off in the background. It was a mental asylum where people were chained to beds. That was then. That's not how it is anymore. So why do people still think like that? Highlighting the fact that we're all the same. I love this study. That's a chap with his gorgeous bow tie by the name of Bertram Forer. And in 1948, from memory, he was a lecturer at university. He's a psychologist, professor, psychiatrist, I can't quite remember. But he said to his class, right, I'm going to interview you all one-on-one, and based on your answers, I will provide every one of you with a detailed personality assessment. Everyone said, great. He interviewed them all one-on-one. He gave them all a one-page personality assessment. The feedback, guys are genius. 85% accurate. People could not believe that he was able to incredibly accurately detail their personality. There's a catch. It was a hoax. He sent the same one-page personality assessment to everybody. What did it say? Things like, you appear confident on the outside, but really you're insecure on the inside. You pretend that you don't care what people think about you, but when you get criticised, it hurts you deeply. You worry about people's perceptions about you. What is he saying? Like we touched on before, we're all the same. Yeah, there's outliers out there that are different in different ways, but we're all the same. Such an incredibly powerful study. Leading by example, you can see there 4 people within the sporting sphere who put their hand up and said, you know what? I'm not in a good place. I need help. And what did their respective clubs and sporting bodies do? As you would hope any workplace would do. They said, right, in Buddy Franklin's case, footy finals doesn't matter. It's not about wins and losses. It's not about money. It's about him. It's about his welfare. And you can just imagine how powerful that is for people in society that have their own struggles, to see these people going, yeah, you know what? I'm taking time out because my mental health is not good. Tragically, last year, with the death of Danny Frawley, we saw the impact of mental health issues, and Danny had been open with his struggles in the past, but his wife wanted to let everyone know about Danny's quote and being aware of his mental health and how his attitude changed. And whilst we weren't able to save Danny just by saying what he said, you know, we hope that we can save so many people. And as he says there, you know, he grew up around footy in country Victoria, around Ballarat. He thought manning up was suffering in silence. No, that's not manning up. Manning up is putting your hand up to help yourself, to encourage other people to get the help they need. I'll finish with this one. And you're looking at that thinking, where are we going here? That's a picture in the aftermath of the tsunami in Indonesia. I was hosting a mental health charity lunch last year, and a police officer who'd had time out of the force because of depression and PTSD was telling us a story on stage. He was talking about his family and he started to get very emotional. I said, oh, tell everyone the story that you told me a couple of days ago when we caught up for coffee. He was saying he was in Indonesia dealing with the death and destruction over there on a horrific scale. And he got a text message from his daughter. And it simply said, Dad, what about the tragedy back here in Australia? And as a father and as a police officer, his heart just stopped. And he quickly fired back and he said, Dal, what's happened? And her reply was, like all teenagers, well, not all of them, but just so gorgeous and innocent, Peter Garrett's leaving Midnight Oil. He laughed. Now, on that stage at that mental health charity, everyone in the room laughed. It picked him up and got him out of a spot where he was struggling, and it picked up the mood of the room. The reason I tell you that story relates to this article that I read in The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald last year, and I love the headline. Finding the right psychologist is kind of like dating. And Sabina Reid, who is a psychologist, I love, and you can read it there, but she believes that any therapy should be peppered with generous dollops of laughter and humour. And as she says, it's not saying that you're being flippant or not being respectful of anything you're talking about, and certainly you're not being disrespectful, of the client, or the patient. But how on earth are you ever going to go back if you can't laugh about things in the right place and have a conversation? Great advice. We need to take our mental health incredibly seriously, always. But right now, we need to work on it more than ever. And it's like our physical health. We've all got those, maybe we're not as fit. And again, I need to go on a few more walks, Nicole. I'm not as fit as I used to be. But I also have to work on my mental health. And, like people watching this, I've had my moments where I just think, what's going on? But then I go for a walk or I ring someone or I put on a song that I love or a movie that I love, you know, and I feel good again. But it's something that we have to keep working on it within yourself and in isolation, but working on your mental health together as a team. And we can do it. Absolutely. I'm a very positive person. We're going to get through it. You watch.
Thank you very much, Brad. Really heartfelt conversation, really insightful, a lot of information to take in there. And I mean, as you know, you and I, you know, we've done this type of thing together before. You know, I've had some experiences and been personally affected by a number of things that you've said there. I've lost people to suicide, but I've also suffered from depression myself. And, you know, it can be really, really tough. And you can feel that there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And I couldn't agree more about a stigma. There is such a stigma around mental health. And being from the UK, I grew up being told, you know, we keep calm and we carry on. You know, British people are known for having that stiff upper lip. And, you know, so as a young child, didn't necessarily know that it was okay to put your hand up and say, like, I'm struggling with this. So you kind of keep it in. And obviously that comes out later on in life. It's always going to come out at some point. So the sooner that you can put your hand up and start having that conversation, not only does that help you as an individual, but it also helps other people around you who are then inspired and encouraged to be able to put their hand up and share their story. So the more that we talk, the more that we share, the more help that we can get ourselves, the more help that we can give other people.
Absolutely. Yep. And there's just by being there for people is, you know, and I'll talk more about kindness, but, you know, when we're helping other people, we're helping ourselves because it makes us feel great.
Definitely. 100%. Yeah. And that's, you know, it's like when we go to work, you know, we go to work to get paid, but the other reason we do it is because we enjoy what we do. You know, it makes us feel good with anything. Myself, you know, you talked about different tricks that you go through to pick yourself back up. Mine, being away from my family, is I've got some fantastic snaps from my holidays with my grandma when I was really young, and lots of kind of Christmas pictures of me and my mum and my sisters and my brothers. And whenever I'm having a bad day, it's going out and having some exercise. It's putting on my favorite tune, but quite often it's just sitting there, getting myself in the moment, looking through those pictures, being thankful for those special moments that I got to spend, you know, with those really special people. And that, I find that really helps me. It brings me back. It often makes me laugh because I think about all the funny times and the funny things that happened and all the little quirks about, you know, your family that could spring to your head. But I highly recommend saving some precious memories in your phone, on your laptop, even having them up as your screensaver at work. I mean, I myself have got pictures of my family kind of and my friends everywhere in those great times, but I found having a screensaver, so when my screen goes to sleep and I'm on the phone and I turn around on my chair, I've got, you know, a nice fun picture up in front of me.
Fabulous tips and ideas, and we're all different. Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? We're all the same, but we're all different. So, and I think, you know, we love reaching out. What we now know, or what we've always known, but it's only been highlighted to another level now, is that social connection. You know, we're social beasts. But how many of us have also noticed, because we've been restricted in the amount of the size of gatherings. You know, I know I go for a coffee and people that might look down at the footpath when you walk past are looking up and saying, hi, how are you? You know,
people are so much more friendly at the moment. I said that the other day. I was out and, you know, people were walking past a number of takeaway joints, and the chef was outside and he kind of said hello, and, you know, you look in and people are just smiling. And I really hope that continues, that level of, you know, interaction, almost, you know, are you okay? Checking in on the community. I think if we can take, you know, that positive from this experience and continue with that in the future, fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Let's grab the best bits and just keep rolling with it.
Definitely. And that leads me on very nicely to my final question. How do you see the workplace, the working community transitioning and transforming beyond today?
Things are going to change. They will, because, I was chatting to a friend the other day who I met through mental health and wellbeing at an event where we met there last year. And he was saying in his workplace that they had been toying with the idea, just an idea of a flexible workplace and where people can work from home for years. But they'd come to the conclusion that it would take years to implement. They had 3 weeks. They did it in 3 weeks, and it is going incredibly well. Incredibly well. So again, let's focus on the positives where we can, and I'm not ignoring the negatives and things and people that have been really badly impacted by what we're going through. But let's grab the best bits of what we already had and continue with them. And then let's grab the best bits that we have adapted to and changed, like flexible working hours and whatever, ways of doing things smarter, ways of the fact now that, hey, we're having a conversation around mental health and well-being. Let's just, if people now are opening up about their mental health and well-being and getting help, fantastic. How good is that? So there might not be as many people in the workplace anymore. People might be working from home. Let's just see. Every different organisation is going to be different. But the fact that we're talking about it and we are going to come out the other side, like my mum said, it's not what happens to us that defines us. It's our attitude. And I only said to someone the other day, in year 12 English, one of our themes was growth. And Nicole, between you and I, and those people that are watching, I didn't quite get it. But I can assure you, as a 17-year-old boy growing up in country Victoria, my headspace was not in growth. But I look now at my life, and in particular the last few months, around difficulties, challenges. I'm not the same person I was 2 or 3 months ago. And I don't think anyone is, because we've actually found out we have grown so much, and we have found out so much about who we are. We found out that, I thought I was not happy about it, but maybe I just thought it was all about physical things. And I was so focused on money and title and this. And now I'm sitting with my kids doing a jigsaw, and I haven't been this happy in years. How good is that?
Yeah, exactly. And it's very easy, as you said, to focus on the negatives, and we need to be shouting about the positives and sharing those, because as we said, there's doom and gloom everywhere. So we have to take those positive pieces and we can't let go of them. And as you said, we're all in a very difficult situation. So therefore we're sharing our experiences and our challenges, and we're all learning from them together. So let's continue to have those conversations, those meaningful conversations, checking in on people, asking people, if they're okay, what can we do to support you? And, this goes, for within the workplace, but just as much outside of the workplace. I think I've spoken to, people, my old friends from back home who I might not have spoken to for a year, for 2, sometimes even 5, and I'm getting a little text and we're reconnecting again, because at the moment, yes, I may be, thousands of miles away, but technically everyone is separated. So now I'm probably closer, to some people in the UK than what I was a year ago. And I really, really value those check-ins and those meaningful conversations. And, you know, we've spoken about this a few times. It was my birthday yesterday. You know, I had a fantastic birthday just, you know, at home with my partner. We didn't go out, we didn't need to do anything. And I really enjoyed that. Would I have done that if things were different? Of course not. I'd have wanted to go out. I'd have wanted to do something. But in fact, having that personal time, that was quality time, was amazing.
And on that, I'll finish with a very brief story, which I think summarizes what you were talking around there, is when things do go back to normal or normal-ish, maybe they won't go back exactly to normal at all. But we're going to make decisions around our future and our family's future and the environment that we're in. A number of years ago, I was part of a swimming club, and we had to be on pool deck very early in the morning, and it was a public holiday Monday. And as I pulled in to go swimming at about 5:15, because it was a holiday, there were people everywhere. It was right near the heart of Melbourne, down on the Yarra. The pool's no longer there. And there were people everywhere because they had the day off. They were going out, having a great time. And a dear friend of mine, Jane, we were going up and down the pool doing laps, and in between a particular set, I said to her, "Oh, wow, did you see all the people out having a good time?" She goes, "Yeah, we swam some more." And then I said to her, "Oh, well, they're out having a good time. We're here swimming." I said, "No, that's the sacrifice we've made." And she looked at me, and I could see that her mind was ticking over. We swam a few more laps, and she said, "Brad, can I just tell you something, my perspective on what you just said?" I said, "What's that?" She said, "They're not sacrifices, they're choices. We haven't sacrificed anything. We've made a choice to be in the pool, and they've made a choice to go out. And that's not being disrespectful to the people going out, because a month later, it could have been us going out having a good time." That was in the mid-90s. And don't get me wrong, there are real sacrifices that people make in life. But I think so many of what we refer to as sacrifices are choices. And I think that's something we need to be aware of as we go back to work. It's not about sacrificing maybe the lifestyle we had before, about sacrificing our social life or sacrificing what we thought was important then to do things that we think is important now. It's about making choices, and making choices that are right for us, right for the people around us, that are right for our family, that are right for our mental health and well-being.
Great. Thank you for sharing. I think that was summed that up really, really nicely. Thank you for sharing your expertise with the community. And on behalf of Intact Beyond, thank you very much, Brad.
Thank you, Nicole. My pleasure.